have to acknowledge the personal failures, and we have to acknowledge the tension between I am trying to have this really liberal, really progressive life in a institution that is anything but. Someone was like, oh, we need to get Meghan some black girlfriends. We need to get her some black girlfriends. I'm like, this woman is almost 40 years old. She has made decisions in her life, and her decisions were not to surround herself with black women. Like, that was her decision. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm back with yet another episode of According to Ashley, which for those of you guys who are new, or for those of you guys who've never seen me before, According to Ashley is my informal chit chat series where I don't stop rocking in my chair because I have ADHD, and I'm not just saying that I have ADHD, so sorry that I fidget so much, but According to Ashley is my informal chit-chat series where I talk completely unfiltered, completely unscripted about various pop cultural issues. And today's pop culture issue that we're going to be discussing is Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's new Netflix series. Specifically, I want to talk about Meghan's blind spots around issues regarding race and just how her upbringing and some of her personal choices ultimately led to this rude awakening that she experienced once marrying into the British monarchy. Now, I'm not going to give a play-by-play of everything that happened in this Netflix series. I'm just going to go over the key moments that I think are worth discussing in the context of what we're talking about. So I think we've been all having this conversation, and by we, I mean the Black community as a whole, of should we care about Meghan? Is Meghan our problem? Should we really care? Is she a Black woman? I personally was a Meghan Markle fan. I knew who she was long before she ever married Prince Harry. I was a huge fan of the show Suits. Like, I literally had a Suits poster like on my bedroom wall, like in college. Like, I was a huge fan of that show, and that's where I was introduced to her. And I knew her back when she was not very well known. So just a context around that. When she married Prince Harry, I distinctively remember Black women over identifying with Meghan Markle. Like, I remember hearing like unambiguously Black women sitting up here saying like, oh my God, like, look, Meghan Markle is proof that Black women can be princesses too. You too can be a princess. This can happen to you. Which my first reaction to that is like, why are we encouraging young girls to marry into a colonial bloodline, imperialistic empire? Like, why are we doing this? That was my first knee-jerk reaction. My second reaction was the obvious reaction that many people probably had of, why are we pretending that the experiences of a woman who is white presenting and biracial is somehow equivalent to women who are unambiguously Black? Like, that was the part for me that very early on in the discussions about Meghan, I was like, and I was seeing like full on Black women do this. And I think it was coming from the more, neoliberal types. We hear in the Oprah interview, we hear it a lot again in this new Netflix series. It's just Meghan's overall just ignorance around race and racial issues. In the Netflix series, we hear about an account where Meghan is, I think she's riding in the car with her mom, who is Black, Doria. Someone has a case of road rage and then proceeds to call Meghan's mom the N-word. And Meghan's mom never talked about it. It was just never discussed. It was never something that was ever acknowledged. Meghan witnessed it, and there was never a discussion after the fact. And you see Doria feeling that guilt over not ever educating her daughter about race. And yeah, I mean, when you're a child, it starts with your parents, right? Like I always say, like, your parents are the first relationship that you're in. Like, your relationship that you have with your parents then colors and shapes your experiences and relationships that you have with men, that you have with friends, that you have with all kinds of people in society. Because when you're young and your brain is not fully developed and you're impressionable, it's up to your parents in the beginning. When you show up in the world and you're an unambiguous Black woman like me, it's like, you're gonna learn. I think I learned pretty early on that racism was a thing. In Meghan's mom's case, I think she probably took a look at her child and saw oh my God, like this child is clearly very fair skinned. Maybe I don't have to have this conversation with her. And I get the feeling, you know, based on the accounts of Meghan and her mom, and, you know, I can get the feeling, I think it's safe to say that Meghan was kind of raised in a really colorblind kind of a way, where she just wasn't ever educated about the complexities of this world and society and what it was like to be a Black person living in America. And again, I think because her mom saw the way that she presented, she probably thought, oh, she'll never really have these experiences, so I'm going to protect her from ever even knowing that these experiences exist. And so I think that that is the first initial failure that we see, is with her mom not taking the time to educate her on the society that Meghan was inhabiting. But I think number two, there is some personal accountability that Meghan needs to take. I think there's this ignorance that Meghan seems to have of this like idea of this fairy tale, this idealized relationship that she has in her head, where she is thinking like, I want to have this really progressive, like diverse family, and just this whole narrative, again, going back to the things that everyone was saying, not everyone, but particularly like liberal Black women were saying when Meghan married Harry of, oh, you too can do this. You can be the one to be the diverse one. Black girls can marry into this empire and Black girls can become princesses too. And it's a whole idea that an individual, that one person can somehow undo centuries old practices of colonialism and imperialism and racism and empire. The idea that one person can somehow make a difference is so flawed. And I think within the Black community, you see so much of a reliance on identity politics and representation politics, because representation does matter. Like, it matters to be able to see people that look like you on your television, on whatever form of media that you consume. It matters, but it's not everything. What matters more than representation is the politic that that particular person of color, woman, whatever marginalized group that they may come from. It matters what politic they hold. So with Meghan, the whole idea that she as an individual was somehow going to make this empire, this well-oiled machine, centuries old, well-oiled machine, that she alone was supposed to be the person to make this difference, was really misinformed. For Meghan herself to have this lack of awareness around that, it really does go to show the privilege of living and inhabiting a white presenting body. And I saw another tweet where someone was like, oh, we need to get Meghan some Black girlfriends. We need to get her some Black girlfriends. I'm like, this woman is almost 40 years old. She has made decisions in her life, and her decisions were not to surround herself with Black women. Like, that was her decision, clearly. I know that Meghan is really close with Serena Williams. I mean, I'm not going to say they're not real friends, but they're not the friends that you chose to be around when you were not in this industry. You know, that you chose to be around when you were a normal, regular person. You know what I'm saying? There is definitely a distinction. And also, when we're talking about being friends with a rich multimillionaire, a rich Black woman versus you being friends with an everyday Black woman, those are two different things. I just want to point that out. So for those people who are going to be in the comments and say, yeah, well, she's besties with Serena, industry friends versus the friends that you chose, like growing up along the way when you weren't really anything, when you weren't famous or anything yet. Those are two different things. And listen, this is a call in. This is not a call out. I want to make that clear. This is a call in and this is not a call out, because honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've been there. I have been in friend groups where I was the only Black person with other people of color, but I was the only Black person. And guess what? I experienced racism. And that is what happens when you put yourself in that situation. And I remember Meghan saying, oh, I didn't even Google him. I never even looked him up. I didn't know much about the royals to begin with. And I'm like, girl, honey, us normies are over here looking up the Facebook profiles of guys that we match with on Hinge to make sure that they have a good politic. Like, you can't do your bare minimum of like doing some research. It doesn't take that much extra effort, because we literally learn about the horrors of colonialism in grade school. Like, come on. Meghan is a highly educated woman, and she has had so many opportunities to educate herself on these matters. We have to acknowledge the personal failures, and we have to acknowledge the tension between I am trying to have this really liberal, really progressive life in a institution that is anything but. You know what I'm saying? Like, there has to be some kind of personal accountability. So with that, you get the question of like, should we care? Is Meghan our problem? If Meghan was a private citizen, I can say that, yes, she's white passing. She can navigate the world as white if she wants to. She's not a private citizen. She's a public figure. And we're aware of her DNA. When we're talking about being biracial, I know we speak a lot in silos within the Black community. Like, biracial automatically somehow translates to black and white, when that's not what it means. Biracial in its literal meaning means of two races, right? Bi, the prefix bi means two, and racial, right, in its literal meaning. But there's plenty of biracial people who are Asian and half Native American, or half white and half Asian, or half black and half Asian. Like, there's many different forms of being biracial. We have to call out, though, the reason that Meghan experienced the backlash and the racism that she experienced is because she's biracial, but mixed with black. It's the black side. And I think Kimberly Foster pointed this out. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if Meghan was biracial and she was half Asian and white, she would not be experiencing the same level of racism that she's experiencing, right? Like, we can call that, we can name that. So I really want to be particular in saying that, yes, like, Meghan's trauma is real, and I sympathize and I feel very bad for her. And obviously, nobody should have to feel what she has felt, and nobody should have to have that kind of vitriol subjected to them. And it's real, and all the racism that she experienced, from the Straight Out of Compton headlines, memes of her child, and the monkeys, and all the racist crap that was tossed around, is real and is a problem. So I know it would be easy for me to say, you know what, Meghan is not her problem. Don't feel bad for her. She is whatever. Like, it would be very easy and very profitable. We're seeing content creators, bloggers, YouTubers go for the easy clickbait, easy thing. And I think social media in general has this incentivized this really binary thinking of black and white. Like, no pun intended. This really black and white thinking of like, you're either condemning them or you're supporting them. But that's not really the case, at least not for me and the way that I feel about Meghan. I think it's complicated. It's nuanced. It's like, girl, we need to take some personal accountability. And you chose this man. You chose to be in this relationship. You chose to marry into this empire with centuries-long history of just violence and discrimination. And you made a personal choice. You're like 40 years old. We make choices in our lives, and sometimes you just got to live with them and not be surprised for the outcome when you make that choice. However, what happened to Meghan in regards to the tabloids and all of the really awful people that went after her with really disgusting tropes that were rooted in misogynoir, which again is a form of misogyny that's specifically directed towards black women, that is wrong. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think two things can be true. You know, it doesn't have to be one binary of I hate Meghan. It doesn't have to be another binary of I love Meghan and I support. Like, I mean, you can do whatever you want, like, obviously. But for me, that's not what Ashley is going to do. Ashley is going to look deeper and say, you know what? There's more to this. I think getting to be ignorant around subjects like this in and of itself is a privilege, and it's also a choice. When you look at old pictures of Meghan, you're like, oh, like, you actually look mixed. Like, she doesn't look like unambiguously black, but she doesn't look white either, like completely white. And it's like, oh, we have made some choices in our adult life. Like, we've made choices. Your baseline understanding around issues about race wouldn't be such a shock if that was something that you had been used to all of your life. You know, I think of like Mariah Carey, for example, right? Mariah Carey has a very similar complexion. Actually, Mariah Carey was on Meghan Markle's podcast talking about growing up biracial. And Mariah Carey, who's also biracial, very fair skin, could be white passing as well, because of the fact that Mariah Carey, her whole career, has been surrounded by Black people. The music and the way that Mariah has navigated her career, despite the way that she presents, you still associate her with Blackness because of the way that she's navigated her career. So I think that's a really good example of someone who has made it a point to navigate their career in a different way. Yes, you can present one way, but there's also choices in the ways that you navigate your career that is going to affect your experiences and your perceptions around different cultural issues. In closing, I will say I have sympathy, but you can have sympathy for someone at the same time. You can challenge their beliefs at the same time. And I want to end with an amazing article that was written by Nyla Burton for Refinery29 entitled "Harry and Meghan Critiques Royal Racism, but Does It Go Far Enough?" And in the article, Nyla says, while the documentary attempts to be a searing critique of the monarchy, its discussion of colonialism, slavery, and racism is incoherent to the point of being offensive at times, such as repeatedly stating how Harry and Meghan were willing to use her to keep Black and brown Commonwealth countries loyal to the Queen, or mentioning that Beyonce texted Meghan that she was selected to break generational curses that needed to be healed. That's a wild claim to make, that a Black woman was selected to heal the generational curses in a white imperialist family responsible for much of the world history's horrors. And Nyla also points out that some of Harry and Meghan's narrative gaps only enable this amnesia and unwillingness to take responsibility. Despite the documentary saying that the UK never acknowledges the horrors of its empire or colonialism, the documentary itself skipped over the horrors of the empire and colonialism, particularly the British involvement in slavery. And finally, Nyla also says that perhaps it does make sense that this documentary would only focus more on the hyper-personal narrative as opposed to zooming out on the wider picture of who the royal family is and what they've done on a global scale, but veering between acknowledging the horrors of slavery in 1 minute, then implying that a Black princess would be a conclusion to that history in the next, is ultimately not sufficient. Although it may be a good start, Harry and Meghan is a documentary that asks too much from audiences. It wants too much praise but isn't willing to make the couple's primary supporters, Black and brown people, feel truly seen by taking full accountability. I definitely want to know your thoughts. What do you guys think about Meghan Markle and this color blindness, or, this rude awakening that she had around her racial identity? Do you think that it's personal accountability that's lacking? Or do you think that maybe it was just a struggle for her to come to terms with her own racial identity? Like, there's so much nuance here. I don't have all the answers, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, which is why I invite you all to share all of your thoughts and your opinions. So I'd love to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, I always want to hear, what pop culture issues am I not discussing that you would like to hear me discuss? Please let me know in the comments down below. And in closing, as we say at the end of all of our videos, in the words of the amazing Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Thank you again so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you on the next video.